Cheers, thanks very much. I appreciate the extension and the invite to come and speak. In terms of opening remarks, I'll try to address a couple of issues that I see as major ones for the campaign for independence and unity here in Ireland. Specifically, one, the internal dynamics of the border poll, and the second one being the role of the European Union going forward, both during a campaign process and post unity. So, in terms of the internal dynamics of a border poll in the Irish context is our referendum. So, to what the Scottish referendum is, the Ulster Ireland border poll is the six-county referendum on Irish unity. So that's provided for under the NI Act of 1998, the implementation anchor of the Good Friday Agreement. Due to the GFA, Good Friday Agreement being an international treaty, there's now an international legal obligation on the host state, i.e. Britain, to provide a border poll referendum on Irish unity. Unfortunately, the power to trigger that referendum lies solely in the hands of the Secretary of State for the North, who at present is Brandon Lewis, a member of the Tory party. And the only way in which he will trigger that if he believes that a majority vote would result in a united Ireland. Now, that is the current and vague criteria for engaging a referendum in the North, and it highlights one very clear issue, that there is no objective mechanism and no public objective criteria to weigh this against. So we are literally at the diktat of a Tory MP, and our future is in his hands regarding the referendum. But despite that, against the backdrop of Brexit and demographic change here across the North, which have been two powerful indicators and powerful tools in putting a united Ireland back on the public table and the public discourse, it's increasingly likely that border poll will manifest in the coming years. Now, while demographics in the context of Ireland are quite crude, what can be said about them is they follow a certain trajectory, and if that can be utilised to bring about constitutional change, then that opportunity must be grasped. A man much better at explaining self-determination processes than me says that those who wait for pure revolution will never live to see it. So with the border poll being likely going forward, those who support independence in Ireland need to utilise that mechanism as a lever to get their voice heard at the table, and then, even more importantly, to deliver Irish unity. That is particularly aimed at Republican activists in Ireland. Nobody except Republicans are willing or indeed even capable of articulating the Republican vision for Irish unity. So we will either be at the table making our case, or will we stand there in the field watching a train go by, unable to impact its direction or destiny. As we all here in Ireland, Scotland and Wales move into the right to choose referendum era, we need to be clear internally and provide clarity to others on the shape and function of our respective referendums. Our respective nations have been subject to bad faith in the past, political manoeuvre from the British state and usurpation by those who currently deny us independence. As a minimum expectation, we need to demand the British state adhere to an international set of standards. There is currently an international set as the Code of Good Practice on Referendums that was laid down by the Venice Commission. So on a personal level, I have set minimum expectations of how a referendum needs to be conducted and how the British state needs to conduct themselves during that process. So the first one is good faith, that the internal parameters, including campaigning rules, the questions and the interpretation of the outcome are not stacked against a positive result for Irish unity. The second one is will of the people, that Britain cannot interfere with the decision of those who voted in the referendum, that should Irish unity emerge, that must be respected and legislated for as our collective will. Third one, being peacefulness, that Britain doesn't engage in rhetoric or in violence, attempt to use threat of violence as a blocking mechanism, or encourage, and should actually encourage those loyal to British citizenship to accept the outcome in favour of Irish unity. Number 4 is clarity, that the question is clear as possible and free from ambiguity. Only one question should be posed on a single ballot paper in order to increase that clarity. 5, voter eligibility. Universal suffrage must be implemented. 16-year-olds should also be permitted to vote. 6, the role of states. As per the Code of Good Practice, states should not promote one agenda to the exclusion of the other. Interventions cannot result in one-sided excessive campaigning. In 1990, Peter Brooke, who was then the Secretary of State to the North, in an effort to engage the IRA and convince the IRA to end the armed campaign, stated that Britain had no selfish strategic or economic interest in the North of Ireland. In this case, Britain must be held accountable to that statement and allow us, as further laid out by the Good Friday Agreement, of which they are a co-signatory, the people of Ireland alone to decide. And the 7th one is international observation. that is absolutely crucial to ensure that the international legitimacy of the referendum and provide peace of mind for activists on the ground that things are being conducted in an appropriate manner. To move on there in terms of the European Union, I'll try to be quick because I'm cutting close to the 6-minute mark. But despite previously mentioned there that Brexit was providing major opportunities for independence activists to push their own particular projects forward and assist in breaking up the union, it's also really important to be aware of the way there are constitutional and international issues when it comes to the European Union. So without kind of going on anti-EU bashing, in 2017 the EU gave guarantees that should Ireland be united, it will retain automatic membership of the European Union without the standard new state entry negotiating process or the state recognition that usually comes with that when a new entity attempts to apply. So at that time, this was lauded as a great achievement, even proposed as a solution to Brexit. So basically, that was being marketed as Irish unity equals the European Union membership. So reject the union with Britain and accept a union with Europe. That same wasn't afforded to Scotland, as many of your own activists will remember from your own independence campaign and leading up to the last referendum, that the European Union said that Scotland would need to reapply for membership and then subsequently be recognised by the states involved. Wales will be in a very similar situation should it achieve its independence, regardless of the population's views or strongly held views on this issue. Question then arises of why is Ireland so special, but in the opposite end, it actually isn't special at all. The legal structures of our new nations define the EU question and our relationship with the EU. Now, in terms of Ireland, the EU have attempted covertly to narrow the scope for constitutional change and how that's going forward. So when Scotland and Wales achieve their independence, they'll be new nations, new states, new constitutional legal entities within a new world order of nations, as should be, and as every nation should once it expresses self-determination. The only way in which United Ireland can retain automatic EU membership is if it forgoes a treaty to a new Ireland, a new republic, or a new state, before being brought into being as a constitutional entity. The EU have attempted to force United Ireland to abandon the creation of a new state and simply accept accession, so a simple transfer of territory between London and Dublin. The current 26-county state would remain in existence and simply extend its internal borders to cover the ceded territory. This would effectively mean bolting on the 6-county state to the 26-county state and calling New Ireland, something independence activists, particularly here in Ireland, have long rejected as a solution to partition. In that event, the much sought after Irish unity would boil down to a simple process of a 26-county state enlargement, so more of the same, just on a bigger scale. There are further internal and constitutional repercussions with that. Because Irish unity would be enlargement of one failed state, a current failed state, it would not have a new international legal personality. Therefore, our reunified Ireland would be bound by the previous obligations and treaties entered by that 26-county state. This would mean, for example, that the Good Friday Agreement would continue indefinitely. That agreement cements the northern state as a constitutional entity and by its own internal articles permits a continuation of that entity into the future. That state would then continue to exist as an obligation of the Irish government and would simply be devolved from Dublin rather than London, as is currently the case. The abolishment of the northern state and its current political institutions have long been on the list of demands from independence activists in Ireland and have created a really strong argument for Irish unity owing to its own dysfunctional nature created by partition. But now, on behalf of the European Union, we have some who wish to implement that formula and ensure that should Irish unity materialise, it will be a minimalist in terms of the change that it can bring forward, and that will serve to curtail the independence project here in Ireland. It will place preconditions on what a post-unity Ireland will look like. So that is not a new Ireland, a new republic or a new state, despite being dressed up like that or despite some of the rhetoric surrounding. So quite simply, should Ireland achieve its independence, it is by right entitled to a blank canvas to paint its own future without external impediment, whether that be from the British Union or the European one. So we want a new state, not a continuation of the old dressed up in new clothes. So that kind of wraps me up.